Well, John Lennox is an emeritus professor of mathematics and the philosophy of science at the University of Oxford. And his new book, Where is God in a Coronavirus World, has just been published both in paperback and digital format by the Good Book Company. And he's on the line from lockdown at his home to talk about it and about life in lockdown as well. John, welcome along. Great to see you.
Glad to be with you again.
John, tell us a bit about what life in lockdown looks for you and Sally at the moment. How are you guys coping?
Well, we're coping very well. It's wonderful. We're very fortunate to have a garden, of course, that we can get out into. And we have very kind neighbours, so that we haven't actually had to venture out very much at all to do shopping and so on. It's a strange business, but we keep in touch with the family using video links and telephone and so on. So although we're isolated, we're not completely cut off from the world.
And you've been keeping yourself busy. I mean, you're busy normally anyway, but what does that busyness look like during this particular phase?
Well, when it started, as you mentioned, I'm a mathematician, and although I never was much of a statistician, I know enough about exponential growth. And it struck me right at the beginning of this. This is going to multiply very rapidly and become a hugely serious threat around the world. And for some reason or other, I felt just inwardly impelled to sit down and try to write something. I wasn't thinking at once of producing a book, but I thought, I need to write into this. And so I did, and I sat down, worked all day long, and more than days long, so to speak, for a week, and produced this little book, Where is God in a Coronavirus World?
It's extraordinary that you have turned it around so quickly.
Well,
Obviously,
it's extraordinary that the Good Book Company, their team is just phenomenal. Tim Thornborough has done an amazing job. And he's already got it translated into, I think, a dozen languages. Although I find that very hard to believe.
It is extraordinary and so good that modern technology allows for that to happen, but also for us to talk about it, very
That's
quickly,
correct, yes.
quickly on the back of its publication. So obviously it was the situation that you saw developing that caused you to want to write the book. What sorts of questions does it answer ultimately, this particular book?
Well, I would put it more modestly than that. I think this kind of issue, a pandemic, it raises huge questions, and it recalls for me something on a much smaller scale, but nevertheless, the New Zealand earthquake, when I arrived in New Zealand just 2 or 3 days after it had happened. And people were asking all kinds of questions as to had it any significance, or is this just another proof that atheism is true and we've got to accept it? Hard luck if we happen to be where it hits, and lucky for us if we aren't. Or people were responding by saying this is a judgment of God, and that wasn't helping too many people either. And I suspected that exactly the same questions would come up. But there would be two dimensions to it, not just one. There'd be those who were more intellectually inclined, and they'd ask the big God questions, where is God and all of this. But there'd be other people who'd be emotionally very distressed. And we've seen that around the world. Loneliness and the self-isolation, grief, especially when you have to say goodbye to a loved one without being able to hug them or kiss them for the last time. That must be absolutely terrible. And psychiatrists and psychologists are talking about the danger of the continuation of this lockdown situation. So it concerned me both from an intellectual perspective and from a pastoral perspective.